This is the Mental Metal Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Metal Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome.
And happy Halloween, or almost happy Halloween, metalheads, here on the Mental Metal Podcast. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Halloween per se, except for the fact that it tells me that November is right around the corner, and November is my favorite month of the year for several reasons. It's my birthday month. Yeah, thank you. It's not yet, but it's coming. And everybody loves a good birthday. And it was also growing up I'm a hunter, and growing up in rural Illinois, it was a big time of year for hunting. I just love the cool weather. But far and away, the biggest reason I love November is it is the start of basketball season. The favorite season of the year in my house growing up, it was always basketball season. We love basketball season, and I coached it for years. I played it in high school and college. My son still plays now in college, so I'm going to get ready to go catch some of his games and hoping he has a good season. It's just like, and I talked to a coach the other day and I asked him how seasons are going, and he said, it's great. We're undefeated right now. Everybody has that hope early in the November about the season. And of course, it's not going to stay undefeated and things aren't going to be great, but it's that promise of hope early in November. It's just a great time of year for basketball. And, I've worked with so many basketball players. Now, I have worked as a mental performance coach that works individually with athletes. I've worked with every type of athlete. I struggle to remember, any sport I haven't coached an athlete in. It's all the usuals, basketball, baseball, football, soccer, softball, track, cross country, golf, wrestling, lacrosse, tennis. I think that's it. I don't know. There's probably something I'm forgetting. It's just about everything you can imagine. Even some dance. Basically, if it's a sport and there's competition, there's possibility of anxiety and needing to get out of your own head, and I can help with that, and I do. But that said, due to my past, I played basketball. I've coached basketball. I have most of my connections in athletics are basketball. Most of the athletes, far and away, the highest percentage I work with are basketball players, and that's fine. Doesn't mean I'm better helping basketball players than others. I think that's more about the individual and their willingness to be helped and wanting to get help. But I just where the connections I have, I think that I have enough experience with athletics that I have the empathy needed and the experience needed to be able to help an athlete that's going through some issues regardless of the sport. So I don't think that matters. It's just that's where my connections are. So most of my work has been done with basketball players and with basketball teams because I do both. And if you're listening to this, if you're ever interested, I always one or two teams a year. I do group coaching with them. It is so useful. I really help build that team. It's not necessarily team building. It's team coaching. So kids are going to learn stuff about themselves, about the team, about each other's. It's going to help develop that bond. I have the coach in the sessions with them, and it is a really useful tool for helping each the purpose of group coaching is to help to reveal the system unto itself. So meaning that it helps each player in a team better understand the team concept and what the team is about. And as a coach, how could that not be a better thing? That is my only goal when I'm working with it, is not focused on one person, not focused on what the coach wants. It's focusing on each individual on the team, from the last man on the bench to the star player to the coach, to better understand the individuals on the team and the team as a whole. It's just understanding the team concept better. And it doesn't do it in the way you think. It uses some coaching techniques that are really useful about, some psychology and how we respond to conflict, and how do we respond to gratitude, and how do we give gratitude, and just team values and what values we share. It's a really, really good thing. And if you are listening to this as a coach and you would like, you're like, hey, this sounds kind of good. I do it virtually. If you're near me in Tennessee, or I'm up in Illinois watching some games or something, we can make it happen. But I've done it virtually before and it works great. Such a fun thing. I love doing it. If you're ever interested in it, just, hit me up. I love working with teams, and it's a really good thing for the team. And for me, honestly, I love doing it. It's a joy. It's a job, but it's a joy for me. And speaking of basketball and basketball coaches, and my guest today is a basketball coach. His name is Clancy Hall, and he is the head coach for the Hendersonville, Tennessee high school. And it's close to where I live now. And he was recommended to me as somebody to come on the podcast by, I've done some work with Sumner County down here in Tennessee, doing some professional development. I do all kinds of professional development with educators. And, I asked some people in there, hey, who would be good guests on my podcast? And Clancy's name came up. I got a hold of him. I went in and watched the practice, or a little open gym and some lifting, just to talk to him and get to know him a little bit. And then I had him on the podcast, and there's so many similarities between Clancy and I. We hit it off really, really quick. There's just, we have a lot of common interests, and it was a good guy to talk to. We're both about the same age. Both played basketball in college. He's a lot better than I am, and he's a bigger guy than I am. I'm a big guy as well, but he's better. He played at Division I, or it was NIA at the time, to transitioning in Division I at Lipscomb. Good school. He played there. Let's see. He teaches chemistry in high school. I've taught some chemistry. I taught biology as well in high school. He grew up on a ranch. I grew up on a farm. He's got kids going through high school right now. In the high school he's coached them some, and that's something I experienced. We had a lot to talk about, and that did not end with just some surface stuff. You'll see in this podcast, so much of what he talks about, it's like I wrote the script for him, and I didn't. It's so much of what he's talking about is the same things I talk about, and the way how we have to change how we deal with today's athletes. And I know that I say that, and some people cringe when we say today's athletes, but the things are different. The world has changed. Sports has changed. And before you just say, well, it's all for the worse, it's not. Some of the things are better, and some of the things that we've learned are better for kids and better for athletes in the long run. The way we talk to kids matter. And as Clancy says in this, like, how you say something matters just as much as what you say. And I don't think that always used to be the way. I think that it used to just be, as the coach, I'm saying it's the way it is. You don't like it, get out of here. You don't like it, it's your problem. And I don't think, I think it's lazy. If I just say that, I think it's lazy for a coach to just say, well, kids are soft and that's the way I coach. If they don't like it, it's easy, right? That's an excuse. That's not you trying to be better as a coach. And Clancy talks about that, about how he's grown as a coach. He's coached for 24, 25 years, how he's grown as a coach. And I think that there's a good message here for coaches. If you aren't looking for ways to change how you reach your athletes, you're not the coach you could be. And I think that some really, really good tips here from Clancy. So stick around, check out the interview, and I'll have a little breakdown on the other side. So coming up, Clancy Hall, the head coach for Hendersonville High School.
Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Thomann, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Metal Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount.
And welcome back to the Mental Metal Podcast. I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and I am here with my guest today, Hendersonville head boys coach, Clancy Hall. It's in Hendersonville, Tennessee. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great. Excited. We got a big football game tonight, so just excited and honored to be able to sit down with you and talk a little bit. Appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you being on, and I love it when school gets back in and sports are going in. Basketball, I know we're talking basketball, but man, I love it when there's sports going on and the community gets around it. It's just it's good times, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of Hendersonville and basketball, give me a little bit about I know you've been there. Is it 25 years now?
This is the start of my 24th year. Yes. So
24th.
It's like we talked about, it's the only real adult job I've had since graduating from college. So yeah, this is 24 years.
Yeah, well, I think having to teach and lead kids is adult enough. I don't know that you need more than that.
Right.
Yeah. But it hasn't all been with the boys program. Is that correct?
No, sir. When I was the boys assistant for 4 years. Then I was the girls head coach for 7. And then I went and became the head coach at one of our feeder middle schools here. Ellis Middle School is one of the 2 middle schools that feed Hendersonville High School. And then I went back to being the boys assistant underneath Kerry West for a second time. And then when he got into administration, I became the boys head coach.
And now remember, because we talked the other day, but so you've been here for the last 24 years of your life, or a little bit more than that, but you hail from West Texas, right?
Yes, sir. I'm originally from a small town near the Panhandle, or up in the Panhandle, near the corner of the Panhandle, called Seminole, Texas. I was there in Seminole for 5 years before graduating, and before that, we lived in Lubbock, Texas, which is just a little bit northeast of that. So really and truly been in Texas all of my school days, like from kindergarten up through graduation.
And that's through high school graduation, right?
Yes, sir, through high school. And then when I graduated high school, I was fortunate enough to get to come to the Nashville area, to Lipscomb University, and play basketball there. 4 years for Don Meyer. I redshirted my first year and then played 3 years for on the late Coach Don Meyer. And then for my fifth year, my senior year, last year of playing, it was Coach Scott Sanderson. And that was in 2000. So I graduated in May of 2000.
And at that time, Lipscomb was it NAIA? What was it?
Yes, we were
NAIA.
NAIA, and then we went Division I, which led to one of the reasons why Coach Meyer decided to pursue a coaching change and why Coach Sanderson got the job. And so that last year, it's kind of fuzzy, and I know the rules have changed since then, but it had something to do with we could have played a Division I schedule, or you were like in this probationary period. So we decided just to play an NAIA schedule, even though the school had already technically declared that they were going to become an NCAA Division I school.
So you were there in the last days of it as it transitioned.
Yes, so the last game that was played in McQuitty Gym before they kind of not technically tore it down, they altered it and built the new gym. The last game was my senior year, Trans-South Championship against Birmingham Southern, and we were fortunate enough to win that game. My roommate, Alan Sharp, made 2 free throws to put us up like by 4 or 5, and so the game was over at that point.
So it's nice to usher it out with a win at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was it drew you to coaching out of college then?
Two aspects of it. Number one, if you play for Coach Meyer, he's a coach's coach, and we constantly met coaches from around the nation, very well-known coaches at all different levels. And so he taught all of his players the coaching aspect as well as the playing side of it. And so you were constantly, brought into contact with what it would be like to be a coach. And my ultimate goal at that time was to try to get into cattle ranching. Parts of my family were cattle ranchers in southeastern Colorado, and that's kind of been the dream. And so I knew that teaching would be a way to wherever I went, I could always teach. And so that was kind of the goal, to do that. And I'm from a family of teachers as well. My mom was a administrator in education, worked in central office and things like that. So it just felt like it went hand in hand. And I enjoyed chemistry in high school and pursued a chemistry teaching degree, and then obviously loved the game of basketball. And I love football as well. I played both in high school as well as high school golf. And I just liked athletics. I liked connecting with kids. I like the discipline it teaches you. And, when I got to Lipscomb and was getting my degree in teaching and pursuing coaching, I started dating a young lady, ended up being my fiance, and of course, who I'm now married to. And she's actually from Hendersonville. She graduated from Hendersonville High School. Her family's from here. Her mom's from here. Her mom graduated from Hendersonville High School as well. So that's kind of why I've been here. There hasn't been much of a choice whether I could leave and get into ranching. That was kind of, God changes your plans, and he certainly changed mine, and for the good, I love what I do, and I'm happy to be doing it.
Yeah. My wife's family has some, parts of her family does some cattle, and all I'm saying is she must be pretty special to pull you away from that. Cause
She's great. I don't get completely pulled away. I make yearly, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year trips to southeastern Colorado to see family and help my aunt and uncle and their family, their son, and so he works on the ranch with them. So yeah, but when I do that, my wife, she doesn't understand why I think that's fun, but she certainly lets me do it.
So long as she lets you do it, that's yes. The important part. So now you mentioned you played football as well, and that was probably, considering where you're from, that was probably a bigger deal than basketball, right?
It's not even probably. It's football in West Texas. I always try to tell the people I've met in Tennessee, and I've lived in Tennessee longer than I've lived anywhere else now. But when you're raised in Texas, people say, "Where are you from?" And I always say, well, I live in Tennessee, but I'm from Texas. But it's a different deal. It's the best analogy, the best way for people to understand it is the people in the South, the Southeast here that love the Southeastern Conference football. That's how Texans treat high school football. So it's that same level of seriousness and the same enjoyment and when they say that, that they close the town down on Friday nights, it's not an exaggeration, not from where I'm from. I mean, you can't get anywhere. Everybody's at the game, whether it's home or away. And they do make sure that the players and the programs are fully funded. And I mean, you can just go online right now and look up Texas high school football stadiums and be pretty amazed at what you see. So it's all true. It's not exaggerated.
So how did it draw you away? I mean, you're a big guy. You're a good athlete. What drew you to basketball over football then?
Oh, I was a much better basketball player than I was a football player. I loved football, and I actually tell people a football game on a Friday night, there's really nothing compared to it. I mean, I've played and been fortunate enough to have really good teammates and played in some really good basketball games and made the Final Four in Texas and played, in Austin and was able to play where University of Texas plays. But a football game is just something different about it. But I wasn't built to play it. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of weaknesses as a football player that I needed to improve upon. In basketball as well. I mean, I had to get a lot bigger and thicker when I graduated high school to be able to compete at the collegiate level. But it's hard to explain, when kids play it and you walk out and you hear the band and you see the lights and, you hear the way the sound whenever there's a touchdown or a big hit. It's just really, really intoxicating. And so you get really addicted to it. I mean, you can kind of see it with fans who've never played, and they'll emotionally just, drown themselves in a game. And they may not have been able to play football, but they just love it. It's just very, very addictive.
I have this picture in my head of these guys at the local coffee shop sitting there on Saturday mornings, and you're walking in and they're like, boy, he's a big boy and he's a good basketball player. We sure wish he was better at football.
I'm sure they said that a lot. I dropped too many passes and messed up too many times. So I enjoyed it. I liked it. And I was fortunate enough to be able to contribute. And the funny thing is can you imagine seeing a 6'9" deep snapper? That was one of my main roles.
That's a long way down there, Coach, to get down there and do that. Yeah. That's funny. 6'9" deep snapper. Yeah. Well, hey, exactly. You do. I guess you do what you're told, and I'm sure that's the idea when you're playing football in West Texas. Coach tells you to do something, you do it, right?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of that, I really want to talk about the difference between you grew up playing football in West Texas, and you grew up playing, through the 90s, and coaching was different back then. And how did that affect the way you coached, at least early on?
Well, the first thing is every coach that I've ever had, in terms of high school football coaches, freshman JV varsity, high school basketball coaches, freshman JV varsity, and then my college basketball coaches, whether it was, Don Meyer, Mike Roller, John Huddy, Jason Shelton, those are all the Lipscomb ones. And then, when they left, when Coach Meyer left, Scott Sanderson, his brother, came in, and then Jay Walton, who was a player at Mississippi State, actually, for a while, he was kind of the post coach. So all of those coaches, they all, even though they may have coached a little differently and maybe coached differently than the way coaches coach today, I never doubted that they cared for players. So that's the one thing that I've taken, is that they didn't get into it to try to promote their name or, develop wealth or develop notoriety. They got into it because they cared for their players. And so some of them were a little more vocal. Some of them might have been a little bit more like how people might classify as negative. But I never, when a coach was getting on to you about, a mistake or something that you did, with those guys, I never thought that they did it maliciously. I always felt that they were doing it because they wanted me to be better. So they did a great job with that. The way my coaching has changed is I've realized that whether it's right or wrong, whether it's good or bad, is that in today's social media society and how everything gets recorded and everything can be played back again, that sometimes people don't hear what you're saying, they hear more of how you're saying it. And so over my years of coaching, I've really struggled with trying to become more positive and trying to, if I am raising my voice, obviously I'm a big guy too. And so if I'm raising my voice on the sideline at a teenager, they need to hear as many times, or actually they need to hear more, how proud I am of them, how good they're doing, and not just pointing out the negative things. And so I've really kind of treated, and I still struggle with it. It's still something that I think all coaches, maybe not all coaches, but I personally struggle with. So I've had to get better at pointing out the positive things, and then trying to wrap my arm around them when they come off the court to talk to them about the negative things. That way I'm sharing the negative things just between the two of us, and then celebrating the positive things. We do talk about, though, that one of the areas that is a non-negotiable would be attitude and effort. And so if we're having a bad attitude, our body language is bad, or we're not giving a good effort, that will be shared verbally, loudly in front of everybody. But if they make a turnover, or something like that, or their man blows past them, then I try to talk to them individually about something like that.
Oh, I think those are great things. A little bit about what's the old saying about praising in public and criticizing in private, that kind of thing. I think that's, that probably really that matters to today's athlete a lot. I think that they don't like being called out, which even though they need it sometimes, it's hard to do. But I love what you're saying there, and it's that positive versus negative. Educators and coaches, let's talk about professional development speakers for a moment. You know the drill. There's some good out there, but there's a lot of bad. I've been there and I've felt your frustration, and that's why I've got something different for you. Professional development that's actually engaging and genuinely useful. As a certified coach and a former educator, I understand the struggles our students and athletes face. The pandemic's impact is real, but so is the potential for positive change. Mental Metal Coaching has 2 presentations designed to help you tackle the social emotional challenges that schools are dealing with. First is for teachers of all ages and is called Live Your 100. This transformative journey draws from my own experiences overcoming hardship. This seminar equips you with the tools to assess mental states, conquer challenges, and infuse positivity into classrooms and to teams. Learn not to survive, but actually thrive. And the second presentation is specifically for coaches, those that tend to sit in the back and draw up plays during presentations. This presentation is called Forging Mental Metal in Athletes. It is not your typical PD. It's about actionable techniques. Empower your athletes to face adversity, develop growth mindsets, and break mental barriers that hold them back. I get it. The skepticism around PD is real, and that's why Mental Metal Coaching stands out. My presentations are rooted in real-world struggles, delivering strategies that you can apply right away. If it all sounds good, contact me, Coach Thomann, or send my information to your administration. Let them know that you want to see professional development that will actually make a difference. I'm back here again with my guest, Clancy Hall. He is the head coach for the Hendersonville High School Commandos, and you see that I love the shirt here today, Coach. I love leaning in. The first time I drove by the high school, I was with my son, and we looked over and we saw over the football field and saw Commandos, and we both were like, I don't know if I like that mascot or I don't know, but it's certainly different. You don't see a lot of I don't know that I have seen that before, so yeah, I enjoy that. So we were talking about the negative and the positive voice, and you mentioned that it was a conscious decision of yours to kind of you had to change the way you were coaching. Have I got that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Tell me about that conscious decision and how you started making that switch. Is it like a light switch, or did it just take a few years slowly to do it?
It is definitely not a light switch. It's still a work in progress, and I'm sure, especially if I wasn't around, and if players and of course their parents too didn't think that it would affect their playing time, they might tell you, well, he needs to turn that switch on bright, because he's barely got it on right now. But I think it came, I had a chance to coach girls, and it didn't end the way I would want it to end. And I was young, and I was I was coaching them wrong. I didn't praise them as much as I needed to. And so once that ended, it kind of, woke me up a little bit about, there are some kids that react and thrive in areas of intensity, and you can say whatever you want to them and they'll still do well, or that'll challenge them to do better. But then there's the others who don't thrive in those situations. And so if you think about it, almost all players are going to thrive if you're as positive publicly and, like you said earlier, and negative privately. Well, then why not try to work towards that? And so I've tried to kind of make that decision. And the other thing too that I've realized is, my staff, we were just talking about this the other day, that sometimes just not saying anything is the best, that it's something that you can cover that tomorrow in practice. You can cover that watching film. That sometimes the most important thing is, and we say this as a team, and we say it to each other, we say next play. We just say next play because, lots of times when a kid's playing and he, let's say, turns the ball over, he's the very first one to know he messed up.
Yeah.
And so he already knows it. So let's just go on. Let's not make, coaches talk about the double mistake. So,
I agree. I think that's such a great point you bring up, because I think that you'll see, and I'm never giving a coach a hard time, because I did, like, I switched and coached girls a year once. So I know your pain about, like, I wish I'd have done that different. But just the idea of, you'll hear a coach just keep talking to a kid, talking. Oh, you got to do this, do this, do this, do this. And then sometimes you'll see that coach turn around to his assistant and be like, why can't that kid think? And why can't he just play? And it's like, well, probably because you're putting stuff in his head constantly and he's trying to process it. So I think your point that sometimes you just say nothing because it's not going to do any good anyway. That's something we got to work on in practice. I think but that is the maturity of a coach who's been around for a few years.
Well, we're still working on it. We talk to the kids all the time. They're working to get better, just like we are. All of our whole staff, we're learning from our mistakes. They're learning from their mistakes. They're teaching us. We're teaching them. And I think the kids have really responded well to that. And on top of that, a lot of coaches too are doing this. There's a lot of really good coaches. The sad thing is, in our profession, only the bad ones. It's either the bad ones or the really elite that everybody hears about. But they don't hear about that middle, I would say maybe 85%, that are just plugging every day. They might be winning 50% of their games, maybe 60% of their games, but their kids are graduating, their kids are staying out of trouble, their kids are becoming, are developing as humans and going to college or getting jobs or going to the military and getting married, but none of that stuff ever makes the press. It's only the really bad ones when a coach messes up, or an elite one who's winning 7, 8, 9, 10 state championships. So, but most of us, we're kind of stuck there in the middle.
Yeah, and enjoying it and doing it and it's never at that 85% in the middle. It's never about the money either. It's you're doing, like, I remember, coach. So I had a job before I was doing education and before I was coaching, like a when you said you had this is the only adult job. Yeah, I had like a real adult job that wasn't any fun at all. And I did that for a while. And then my first year of coaching, I was an assistant under a guy, and we got done, and I got I got this stipend I got for coaching. And I just did this little exercise real quick and figured out how many, what I got paid per hour. I just gathered how many hours I probably, and I wasn't even the head coach. And I was like, I am never doing that again. Like, ever.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. But it was more of an exercise on me just to know that that's what it's about, and reminding myself that that's what it's about. You're there to help kids and do those things. And I just, one thing I had to bring up, Coach. So I reached out to you and you said, hey, come on in and check us out. We're working out. We're doing some stuff. And I walk into the locker room or the weight room, and I'm looking around for you. And the first thing I do, and I'm looking over there, and you're doing reps of 225 over there, benching with the guys. And I'm like, I absolutely loved that. You're in there with the guys, and you're just being a part of what they're doing. And I just, when you're talking about connecting with the guys, I don't know if you just do it because you're like, hey, I get a workout in, or if it's on purpose. But just, I think that connection there is
is fantastic.
It's intentional. I mean, yes, there's benefits. Obviously, I get to work out, and I do enjoy lifting weights. I could probably do a better job with my diet, but I guess we all could. But
Hey,
the guys, when we lift, it's a really cool dynamic because it's not as much pressure as a game, but at the same time, they've really bought in. These past 6 to 7 years, our guys have really seen some great gains and how it's helped them on the basketball court. And so I think when they see their coach in there with them, they understand that, hey, this could be a lifelong thing, just like being a good leader is a lifelong thing, just like picking up trash is a lifelong thing, just like taking notes, just like opening the door, telling a teammate good job. I mean, you can do all those things the rest of your life. And, lifting weights isn't so much about how much as it is just doing it. Just, I've heard our preacher talk about the importance of being present. And so a lot of coaches, and at different levels, they might not even be in the weight room. They might turn that over or whatever. But I try to only get them for a little while. They may not think that. They may think like they're with me forever. But so I like to try to be present with them. And we cut up, we tell jokes, we encourage each other, and I get to see them really find success. And, success breeds success. We say that all the time. So you got a kid who makes a goal to bench 185 when we max out here in a month, and he reaches that. Well, that builds his confidence for what he could do on the basketball court. So I like to be a part of it. It's fun. It is a benefit for me, but I do think that connection, like you keep talking about with kids, you're not really going to truly get it if all they ever do is just listen to one of your sermons.
Yeah. No, you were in the trenches, and I love that. And you're talking about success breeding success. And I think that's a great segue into the fact that you've started to have a little bit of success here over the last couple of years. That yeah.
And that's been wonderful for this community, for the school, for the parents, and of course for the players mostly. But when you ask people to commit with time, you ask people to commit financially when we're fundraising. They love to be a part of something that's successful. And I can't tell you the number of people. And, last year, the wins were very evident, and we were able to go further into the playoffs than we've been in 20 years. But even the years before that, people would come up to us, come up to me, come up to parents, and they would say, I just really enjoy watching your guys play. They may not be, and then fill in the blank, the most talented, the tallest, the fastest, the best shooting, whatever you want to say, but they sure do play hard, and they play for each other. And that's what we're trying to teach these kids, is how important that is in those life lessons. Our assistant, Coach Stevens, he always tells them, he's like, we're not going to know if we were successful with you until you're 25, 26, 27. So that's kind of can maybe be discouraging to coaches, but when they're 25, 26, and 27, no one's going to care whether or not they can make a three-pointer, dunk a basketball, take a charge. They're going to care, how do they treat their wives? How do they treat their children? Are they at work on time? Those things. And so hopefully, I know all this stuff's cliche, and everybody's supposed to say it, especially if you're being interviewed on a podcast or whatever. But we truly, truly try to do those things. We're not perfect. We make a lot of mistakes, but that is really one of our major areas of focus when we work with these kids. So it's made us successful. And when you become successful, I do think it's more because of those little things. And I feel bad for maybe some of the teams in the past 2-3 years who didn't see the same amount of wins, but they were doing the same stuff that last year's team was doing. And they've built that foundation.
And I see that, and I can tell that's evident because when you talk about you said your non-negotiables that you're always going to point out were attitude and effort. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to me, those are what coaches and that's what parents really should be praising, is that attitude and effort. Now, that takes a little bit of time to develop into wins depending on different things, but it's really the only trigger you have. You can't just I think that too many coaches are worried way too many about the wins and honestly sometimes can get away. Some players are just better, coach, and they don't have to give the effort and attitude, and they get to play, or they do for some coaches. And I think that doesn't lend for long-term success. You're doing it the way it's the hard way, but it's the best way. And
well, we're trying, and and what you just said too is also a good life lesson that these kids learn, is that you might have a kid on your team, because our job as coaches is to win basketball games too, and you might have a kid on your team who struggles more in the attitude and effort area, but he's extremely talented. He can shoot the ball, he can run, jump, dribble, make passes, defend. And so his struggles with attitude and effort. Well, we play those kids. I mean, we it comes to a point. If there's a point in which he's crossed the line, then it wouldn't matter. But then you have another kid who's great attitude and great effort. He just isn't the right size or not the right speed or whatever. Well, those are his struggles. And so what we try to tell kids is like, everybody's got something. There are very few. When you get that unicorn player that's attitude and effort's wonderful and his talent's incredible, or her talent, if you're coaching girls or whatever, then yeah, those are the ones that everybody dreams of. But so we try to tell them it's just, athletics is a wonderful reflection of life. You can go through life and do everything to the best of your ability and still have a struggling point in your marriage, or still have a kid that you find out gets leukemia. Okay, well then what do? Do you just throw in the towel and blame and point fingers, or do you work through those struggles? And so that's the same thing that we do in athletics, and we just keep telling them, we're trying to train you, And I was telling them the other day, the things that we usually harp on them the most, like we get onto them the most if they have a bad attitude or if they're late, secretly that was probably the thing that we may have struggled with when we were their age, and we don't want them to.
Yeah. And because we see the faults and we see where it leads if we do that, and we're trying to help them out. And it's interesting when you're talking about getting those unicorn players. Well, if you only win because you've got a stacked deck, then you may not be that good of a coach. And it's that anybody can win with that. And I used to I don't know how it is in Tennessee and Texas, but there was this expression I would hear coaches that was like nails on a chalkboard for me, that would say, a coach would say something like, I can't make chicken salad out of chicken feathers, or whatever. You know that one. You know that expression. And I thought, well, that's convenient for you, right? Like to just blame your players for not being very good. Well, then get to work on it, right? Yeah. Then learn, because like you said, every kid has something. They have something, and I'm not saying that talent doesn't help. It does, but you're trying to build stuff regardless. Well, and
if our metric of success is only wins, then maybe that saying does fit in, But what we're trying to do is we want to win. That's at the forefront of what we're doing. But like we said, our metric of success isn't just 25 wins and 8 losses, or, going far in the playoffs, because you're going to run into teams, and our district's got a ton of them, with just some who we've got coaches that would say probably the same things I'm saying about how they want their players to act. And then their kids are 4 or 5 inches taller, faster, all those, and so we're all fighting the same battle. We're all training the kids the same way, and eventually someone's going to have to win. I mean, in basketball, there's not ties. So, if my metric of success is when I'm saying that saying, you can only make chicken salad, can't make chicken salad, well, if that's just wins, then yeah, that saying is right. But I can see these kids, not talk back to their parents. I can see them learn to communicate, like if they're going to be absent. I can see them fundraise. I can see them make gains in the weight room. And in that way, we were successful, So, yeah, you're right. It just depends upon what our metric is and what our focus is.
Yeah, and it's nice. And if you have the right metric and you're trying to build all those things, and you start to get the win metric, which it's funny how often that usually it follows behind it. It does. Yeah. I heard a guy the other day that said, a guy said, I wrote it down. He said, you need to learn how to keep working even when success is late to the party. And I'm like, man, that's really good. Right. That's I'm going to write that. I was like, because you have to believe it's coming, because it will, but it's not always on time. So in a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where mental mental coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mental Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mental Coaching and see them excel.
The Mental Mental Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
And I really want to get into developing that mental toughness, and just like I do think that just like athletic ability, mental ability is part genetic and part developed. Some kids come at you with some and some kids don't. And I know that you've got a couple of athletes playing right now at the high school you're at. And I'm just, so now I mean, it's really like all this stuff you've been putting into practice, and you're like, this is how you develop a kid. This is how you develop a kid. Now it's like, oh, I have to worry about my own kid here now. Yeah. And it's like, so what's the Coach Hall secret to success for developing that mental toughness beyond the genetic portion of it?
Marry a superior wife. That's that's the biggest, most important, most valuable piece of advice. She's was an athlete. She's extremely patient. She balances out my impatience, and so she does a great job of calming me down, calming kids down. But I think that, for us as a family, we try not to be different. I want my children to see the same person on the sideline that they do at home. And so what I've always tried to tell people is, and I've had my oldest daughter, or my oldest athlete is a daughter. Our oldest daughter's graduated. And then our next daughter, she's 17 and is on the girls team. And then our son's on the freshman. He's a freshman and plays football, basketball. But she's had me in class both for 2 semesters. And so what I hope she saw was the same intensity in the classroom that she saw as a father, what's expected, and that she also sees when I'm coaching the boys team. And then the same would be true for my son, although he hasn't had me in class. He's, we're at home together, and I expect things from him the same way I would expect from him as a member of our basketball team. So I think consistency is the number one thing when you're raising athletes. You hear a lot of people say, I actually had a colleague say this once, and it was pretty disappointing, said that if it wasn't for, and then the sport, he mentioned his sport, I wouldn't be teaching. And I was like, that's sad, because that tells me I hope my children never have you as a teacher. And so we talk about with our athletes, I'm as transparent as I can be. I try to tell them all the time that, I can't be just a good coach. We say things like, being a champion isn't a water faucet. You can't just turn it on and turn it off. It's supposed to be constant. And so I can't be just a good basketball coach and then really crappy in the classroom and, a terrible husband and terrible father. So for us, when we're raising athletes, we're hoping that they see that consistency no matter what the arena is. So whether the arena is the basketball court, a football field, my daughter plays volleyball, she's in track. And so we want her to do that same consistent attitude and effort in all the areas of her life.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you said you teach chemistry as well?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, you're my guy. Like I spent 10 years teaching high school. I did a little bit of chemistry. Of the sciences in high school, chemistry is probably my least favorite.
Yeah, most people would say that.
I taught biology and then physics for a while, and I really enjoy both of those. But And I get what you're saying about having that same energy and that same intention with your classroom as you do the sideline. But come on, it's not quite the same intensity as a Friday night football game or Friday night basketball game as it is in the classroom, right?
No, not. I mean, obviously, I'm louder on the basketball floor,
Yeah.
but in terms of like the definition of intensity, I guess would be if you're just thinking of in terms of like stereotypical coach shouting on the sidelines. But in the classroom, I mean, we expect kids to give their best effort on an assignment,
Yes.
on a test, and so that would be the same as what's expected. I would hope that people would say, that Coach Hall enjoys teaching as much as he does coaching, which I feel like I do. I hope that I'm portraying that. I might be failing in that area, but and then the same. And then what's funny, and you being a coach, this, the people that probably see the least amount, that see my failings the most, are my family, because you expect your wife is going to understand why you can't show up for this because you've got a game. And then your kids learn, oh, well, he's going to miss this because he's got a game or he's got a commitment. And so what's funny is that in the profession of teaching and coaching, it's very rare that you'll have a coach be like, okay, someone's going to have to sub for me tonight as we play Gallatin on Friday night for, the district championship because my daughter's got, father-daughter dance at church. Like, I've had to miss those because they were always on Friday nights. So they're the ones that suffer.
Yeah. And there's that, you talked about that 85% in the middle that nobody talks about. There's so many men and women doing that all through athletics that are, it's a huge sacrifice to put that time and effort into other people's kids, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, it's very rewarding, but it can get, like you said, it comes at the sacrifice of your own family sometimes.
Well, and I think too, like we mentioned earlier, now that I've gotten into it more and I'm starting to see former athletes and former students have their own families, now the rewards are really coming back and they're starting to pour back in. Like we have so many people that babysat our kids that are now married and have their own kids, and now my daughter's babysitting their kids, or they're helping support because they own a business or have become a doctor or something. And we can go to them and say, hey, do you mind donating? And they, without hesitation, say yes. And so it's really opened my eyes as to what truly success is. And so that's one of the things that we try to talk to our children, all three of our children. It's just that the two younger ones are currently in sports. So we try to talk to them about, like, this is why we make athletics such a large part of our family, is to try to teach you these things.
Yeah.
And as a former coach and you're a coach still, like, there's nothing better than you're walking through Kroger or something and somebody you haven't seen in 15 years steps up and the first thing they do is, hey, coach, right?
Yeah.
And that's just what, and it means something to yourself and it means something to them.
Absolutely.
And hearing them do that, that's fantastic. So the last question I always ask my guests, Coach, is what did I not ask? What did we not talk about that we should have in this whole realm of athletics and mental toughness and coaching?
The only thing I would say is, and I actually had this conversation just actually a few minutes ago with a former graduate of Hendersonville, is I think that we need to do a better job, all of us as a whole, of understanding that even today, when we read all of the negative things, that there's still more good out there than there is bad. We still have more kids that appreciate being on teams. We still have more parents that are supportive parents. We still have more coaches that are doing things the right way than the negative things that we see. I think maybe this sensationalism of social media and the quick, lightning grab a headline type of deal that make you try to think that the world's coming to an end. We do see bad things. Yeah. And I'm not trying to say that there doesn't need to be some changes, but in the grand scheme of it, there's no way that we could continue to do these things. There's no way that high school athletics would function if the majority of the coaches weren't great people. And the same thing goes for the players and the parents and the administrators. So, yeah, that would be the only thing. But there's a lot of good out there. There's a lot. Yeah. in our district, we got so many good coaches that are doing all the right stuff.
I agree, especially the social media. It's one of two things. People are posting their super, super high points, trying to, let's be honest, trying to build their ego a little bit,
Yeah.
or they're really getting negative and complaining about something. So it's a lot like we were talking about. The 85% of the stuff's there in the middle, and
Right.
that's all, and that's what makes everything run on a daily basis. And man, you were so gracious to let me. You said, "Hey," I said, "Hey, I'd like to meet," and you said, "Come on in," let me see your guys do some workouts, some sprints, doing some playing some little pickup. And I love the energy and you can feel it when you've got a coach and a team that enjoy each other's company and like getting work done and getting things done. It's an energy when you walk into a gym, when you walk into a workout room, and you feel that positive energy. And it's one of my favorite places to be, even if I've never been in there before. And I felt that when I walk in, when you're walked in, and like I said, you're in there doing reps, and the music's pumping, and then you had them out there running sprints, and and no kid likes it, but
Right.
you guys are joking around about it, and they know it's a necessity, that's something they have to do. And I just putting that out there for you. I felt like it's a really good vibe. I love the energy that you're putting out there, and I think without me, I've never even seen you coach a game. I've seen some of your record coming up, and I know you're doing a good job, but it's evident to me just from somebody who's been around it enough that you're doing the right things, Coach.
Well, I appreciate it. And it does, like the saying, it takes a village, and we've got very supportive administration. We've got people that I'm friends with, and not just as colleagues, but also personal friends with that make this go, and a supportive family, and then parents and players that have bought in. And that's, like you said, that's what it gives us the chance to have such a positive outlook and have kids work hard. So I really appreciate that. Makes us feel good. And we'll definitely make sure the guys know that from a first impression, somebody that just walked in for, maybe you were here about an hour and a half, that you were able to get that same type of vibe. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And it's going to be my pleasure to come in and catch a couple games this winter. I
Absolutely.
look forward to it. So
Yeah,
yeah, you bet. Any last words of advice for us, Coach?
Let's go Commandos.
You got it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Coach.
All right. Thank you.
Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Thomann, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Metal Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount.
I love the idea of knowing that you can learn something from every person you meet. And I genuinely believe that. Some of that's new for me. I believe that, my time with my stroke and my not being able to communicate like I wanted to, it helped me understand people better, that people communicate in different ways. And just, the people that I run into now, I know that it doesn't matter how people say it or whatever. Like, there's something I can take from everything. So I'm telling you that everybody I talk to, I believe that I have something to learn from. But there's certainly people that I learn more from than others. And this interview is definitely one of them. Clancy, the more I talked to him, the more I liked what I heard, and I liked the way he phrased things. And there's a lot of notes that I took from this, and I'm really impressed with so much of the way he does stuff. And I think probably the thing that I want to remember the most is the idea when he talks about, he used the phrase, your metric of success, which is not a new idea or anything, but just understanding that you have to know what your metric of success is as a coach, as an athlete. But let's talk about coaches. What is your metric of success? There's multiple metrics of success. I think that wins are definitely one of them. They have to be. If they're, it's easy to say, oh, we don't worry about wins and things like that. And there's a truth to that. And you'll hear me talk about stuff like that. But yeah, you still have to win enough to keep your job as a coach. You have to win some games, and we could argue on the best way to do that, but you still have to win some. But I think that the good coaches know that your metric of success has to go beyond that. It has to. Winning cannot be your only metric of success. And I would go as far as to say it can't be your primary metric of success. But teams are, going to need to win some. And one of the things that, we were talking in there, and I'm always jotting notes, but it was something on the order of, there are winning teams that are winning, that are more successful because they have more than wins, that they don't work hard. I'm not saying you don't have to win or work hard to win, but there are teams that work just as hard in a culture and a program in the years building it up. There are teams along the way that have not had as many wins that put in just the same, if not more, effort and didn't get as many wins because cultures grow, right? And you start to these, you players that have come along later in a culture, some of the systems and the momentum which matter in culture, they're in place, and they have to keep working. But it's a whole lot easier to keep an object moving than it is to get it started, and that's a physics thing, right? And it's true. The point is, why do we only say that the latest team that has the most wins is the most successful? When we want to look at success, we should look at other metrics. And I think that that's one of the things that Clancy is talking about there is if you're working really hard and you're developing these athletes, then that's the success. And he mentioned something about athletics mirroring life, which I agree 100%. I think that that's one of the reasons I work with athletes, is because I know that if you can handle some of the stuff with athletics, you're more prepared for life. And I think we are getting, there's not everybody here, but I think most people that are level-headed and good, even keel people, that's sort of people that I enjoy to talk with, know that life isn't all about having the best house, the nicest car, the biggest salary, and making the most money. We know that should not be the only metric for success in life. In fact, we're pretty sure it's not. It's not a great indicator of fulfillment and happiness necessarily. Just your bank account. There's certainly a level that it really helps to have some, to have that monetary and those material goods you have to have at some level. But yet we don't necessarily think that the team that has the most wins, we just automatically assume that they're the most successful, right? Wouldn't that be a similar idea? And maybe that analogy falls flat. I don't know, but I don't think it does. I think there are teams, like I said, that don't have the win credentials that other successful programs have that have more wins. I think that he hit it the nail on the head when he talked about his assistant coach that mentioned that, hey, we're not going to know what kind of job we did with you until you're 25 years old. And that's what we're talking about, is as a coach, growing individuals for long-term success and getting that long-term growth. And I don't know that making sure that you have the most wins is the way to get that. I think that you want to shoot for that. You're going to try to win every game. You're going to do everything you can, but that shouldn't be the be all end all the way that we measure that. And I know that's tough. And there's probably some errors in my judgment here, the way I'm looking at it, but I think that there's something there. And I don't have the formula right now, and I don't have it all planned out, but I just know it's a little bit more tricky than we think. And it's not just about getting the most wins. So the trick is then, and the formula I guess we're trying to figure out is, well, how do you coach to get that growth? What are you looking for? And Clancy mentioned about he made a conscious decision about to become more positive. And he said he still struggles with it. And I wrote this down after he was talking, and I wrote that some players thrive in negativity, but all players can thrive in positivity. And I believe that's true. There are some players that the negativity doesn't affect them. It might even motivate them. But I think those same guys can be, and gals can be lifted up with positivity, and you can do it with others as well. Now, make sure you understand that negativity is not the same as adversity. Adversity is a given, and you have to have adversity to get better. But as a coach, you just develop, adding negativity to that adversity doesn't make it worse or make it better. I think as a coach, you need to be just steeped in positivity among that adversity. I think that's what we're talking about, is developing that positive mindset and build those kids up while they're facing that adversity. And, it's not going to be easy all the time. And there are certain things that he said I get more negative about than others. And some of those are those non-negotiables where he's talking about attitude and effort. And he will, for those, he will let you have it in public. Right. And I think that's a motivation. I think that's okay. I think that because if you're at least, I talk about praising the controllables and focusing on the controllables, you are really talking about the controllables in the moment that can be changed in that moment. Hey, you aren't hustling. You can hustle more. That can be something that can be changed. But the other stuff, the stuff that takes some more time to develop, if a kid's making turnovers or not making shots or dropping their shoulder or, not, reading in whatever sport it is. I think that those sort of things, as he mentioned, he said, I praise in public, but I criticize in private, and we work on that later. And sometimes we don't do anything in a game because we know that that's something just to be worked on in practice. And I think that's a really, obviously, I think Clancy's been coaching for a while, and I think that's a level of maturity that is admirable and something we should be working on as coaches to help athletes. Just the entire idea of, it's going to be hard. There's going to be difficult times, but use positivity in those moments, not negativity. And if that's not what you're doing, that's something I think you should be striving for. And also, I'm telling you, I walked into that room and I couldn't find him. And I was like, where is the coach? And he's down there doing reps of 225. Kids are cheering him on. He's racking plates. He's cheering them on. He is in there with his kids and he is working with them. And he mentioned the word sermon, about not giving them a sermon, and he is not preaching his kids. He is in the trenches with his kids. And you could see that, you could feel that place. It wasn't, again, and I think that only comes from that positivity and them knowing that you care. And yeah, I think that was really good. They all feel like they're all on the same team, and they're doing their best to win that's a goal, but it's not the only goal. It's not the only metric of success. So hopefully you can figure out what your metrics of success are as a coach and how you can make conscious decisions to measure that and improve on it. And I think that's the takeaway from this. So hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. And until next time, and happy November coming up. Here we go. I'm excited. Hopefully I see you out at some games. So this has been your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and this has been the Mental Metal Podcast.
Thanks again for listening to the Mental Metal Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Metal Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Metal Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Metal Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.